And how will that come across on stage? A PBS NewsHour Vote 2020 election special, the final presidential debate.
Thursday night at 6 on Arizona PBS. Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from
The Persian Room. Travel to another world, to a land of exotic aromas and period decor for a fine dining experience. The Persian Room in North Scottsdale on Scottsdale Road, one light north of Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard. Gourmet exotic cuisine at its best.
I'm Susan Linkus of the Linkus Group, a fee-based registered investment advisor specializing in financial planning, investment management, insurance strategies, and more. LinkusGroup.com, investing for life.
With Election Day just 2 weeks away, President Trump is back campaigning in the Valley. We'll have the key takeaways from his latest push to swing Arizona to the right.
Plus, how a free online system helps with legal immigration issues.
And later this half hour, what you should be doing to take care of yourself during the coronavirus crisis.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Mackenzie Allen Charmley.
And I'm Dylan McKim. Thank you for joining us. President Donald Trump was back in Arizona today, campaigning in Prescott and Tucson. The latest polls showed Democratic challenger Joe Biden with anywhere from a 3-point to an 8-point lead. Cronkite News reporter Jake Holter has more on the president's visit.
This marks the first time the president has visited northern Arizona this campaign cycle. He was originally set to host a rally in Flagstaff earlier this month, but canceled due to his COVID-19 infection.
Hello, Prescott. I better speak fast. This sun is hot.
At around noon today, President Trump landed at Prescott Regional Airport to host a rally. The president talked about his recovery from COVID-19 and using the treatment Regeneron.
I took it. I felt like Superman. The next morning, I woke up. I said, let me out. With your vote, we will continue to cut your taxes and regulations to maintain your energy independence, strengthen our military, support our great police, protect our Second Amendment, which is under siege.
With the announcement of the rally, Trump was again criticized by some for putting people at risk for the coronavirus. Grant Woods, former Attorney General of Arizona, slammed Trump for hosting the airport rallies today.
What happens at those airports today makes it dramatically, it increases dramatically our chances that the coronavirus will spike again in Arizona. It's not right.
Former Vice President Joe Biden also released a statement earlier today on President Trump's visit to Arizona, saying in part, quote, he wants to sell Arizona families more of the same reckless leadership that has devastated the state's economy, shuttered thousands of small businesses, and threatens protections for the 2.8 million Arizonans living with a pre-existing condition.
15 days from now, we're going to win the state of Arizona, and we're going to win 4 more years in the White House.
After the Prescott rally, Trump headed south to Tucson. Ahead of the visit, Mayor Regina Romero voiced her concern that the event will spark an uptick in cases in her city again.
We welcome the president to Tucson, but we do ask them to comply with CDC guidelines and the mandatory mask ordinance in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
The mayor also made note of President Trump's outstanding $80,000 bill from his last visit to Tucson, asking him to pay it as soon as possible.
Trump's trip to Republican-heavy rural Arizona is important as he needs to dominate the area to secure a win in Arizona. A poll from OH Predictive and sponsored by AARP revealed that older voters found Biden more trustworthy on most issues and have him leading by 2 points. While a relatively negligible lead, it puts pressure on Trump as the over 50 group is predicted to decide the election in Arizona. In the broadcast center, Jake Holter, Cronkite News.
New tonight, the Supreme Court will hear 2 cases involving the Trump administration's policies at the U.S.-Mexico border. The first case is regarding the administration's attempt to construct more barriers at the border using Pentagon funds. The other involves the administration's policy requiring asylum seekers to stay in Mexico while they wait for court hearings in the U.S. In both cases, lower courts struck down the policies. However, the Supreme Court is allowing border construction and the Remain in Mexico policy to continue pending the appeals process. The cases are not expected to be heard at the High Court until next year.
Navigating the U.S. immigration process is not just challenging, but costly. Filing and attorney fees can make naturalization or DACA renewal inaccessible for some Arizonans. Cronkite News reporter Kylie Cochran shows us how one nonprofit uses technology to help immigrants around the country.
My dream, the American dream, is to build homes.
Daniel Sartori is a UCLA-educated contractor by trade. Sartori and Delilah Myron own Daniel Versatile Services.
I was naturalized in 1967 at the age of 6 years old. Me and my whole family, my 3 brothers and sisters, and my mom and dad.
Sartori was born in Argentina, but spent most of his life in California, where he lost his naturalization certificate. And without a copy, Sartori couldn't apply for an Arizona contractor's license when he moved.
I really never found a use for my naturalization paper until I got to Arizona 2 years ago. And it's been a burden beyond belief.
Now he's missing out on some big contracting jobs. And his struggle to navigate the immigration process over 50 years later is just as frustrating.
Of all the turmoil in the application, not getting a hold of anybody on the phone because you have a question, so on and so on. Attorneys wanted so much money.
So in 2019, a group of Harvard undergraduates, law students, and attorneys started Immigrants Like Us, now known as Immigrationhelp.org, for people like Sartori.
So if you have to pay high attorney fees and high filing fees, it can become pretty inaccessible. So we wanted to make these processes much more accessible and streamline them using technology.
Here is the $555 fee that Sartori paid just for his naturalization application. Add on an extra $800 that Sartori was quoted during his search for an attorney, and your wallet hurts a lot more than losing Monopoly money. Fernando Urbina, the director of outreach, says they've helped over 1,000 people in Arizona and across the country with naturalization, family green card, and DACA renewal at no cost.
And so the way we work is that individuals come to our site, they enter their information into a very easy-to-use TurboTax style application. This application screens their cases and prepares the required forms and supporting documents needed. Our in-house team reviews these documents for free.
Since Sartori struggled with his application, his girlfriend Myron helped fill it out with Immigrationhelp.org support. She says the nonprofit's aid went beyond the online application.
But yeah, they walked me through everything, and it didn't seem like it was a nuisance or inconvenience for them. But they answered all my questions on the phone. They sent me emails with step-by-steps and referrals if I had to.
While he waits for his certificate to come in the mail, Sartori continues to work on his specialty, raw wood.
I made this door right here out of scratch, and I just put another...
And grow their family business.
I think we can become not just a family business, but become company, and be a name.
Myron says thanks to Immigrationhelp.org, they have one less weight on their shoulders.
They know what they're doing. They do their job, they do it well, and they do it like they want to be there. For us, for customers and people who are trying for that American dream.
Kylie Cochran, Cronkite News.
Along with personal application support, the nonprofit also publishes step-by-step filing guides and articles tackling common immigration questions. You can visit immigrationhelp.org to learn more.
It's a critical week for that contentious stimulus bill. The Republican-led Senate has scheduled 2 votes on a plan that could bring some financial relief to millions of people during the coronavirus pandemic. On Tuesday, they're expected to vote on a standalone Paycheck Protection Program bill to help small businesses. And Wednesday, they'll vote on a $500 billion stimulus bill that Democrats blocked last month. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has issued a warning that may impact any chance of passing the bill before the November election. She says lawmakers need to get answers to key questions by the end of the day tomorrow, or there won't be enough time to get a bill passed before Election Day.
We're saying to them, we have to freeze the design on some of these things. Are we going with it or not? And what is the language? They took out 55% of the language that we had there for testing and tracing.
The urgency to strike a deal comes at a time when unemployment levels are high, small businesses are shuttering, and direct payments and enhanced unemployment insurance that helped keep families afloat have ended.
It was the day after President Donald Trump's inauguration in 2017 that the first Women's March took place. Millions of women marching in cities around the world. Now, with another election just around the corner, many of those women marched again this weekend to make sure Trump doesn't get a second term. Maithili Gupi was at the march in Washington.
With about 2 weeks to the election and a possible Supreme Court justice confirmation, thousands of people joined the Women's March in Washington. This march usually happens in January, but a sense of urgency brought it to October.
Everything is on the line this November.
And I'm not telling you to vote blue, I'm not telling you to vote red, I'm telling you to vote your conscience, I'm telling you to work for decency, for empathy, I'm telling you to work for a role model for your kids. But do go vote, whoever you're voting for.
Organizers said the DC March drew thousands of people like Teal Ramadi, who came from New York for the march.
I just think there's too much at stake to sit home and just yell at the TV. So we wanted to physically come.
It is time to defeat Trump and everything he stands for.
The DC March was just one of the many events around the country Saturday, including marches in Arizona. Like everything else this year, COVID-19 brought a different look to the march. People were masked, asked to stay distant, and urged not to travel for the march.
The only super spreader event in DC is going to be the one in the White House, y'all.
But that did not stop Tucson native Deja Fox, who came from San Diego to march.
I started fighting for sex education reform in the Tucson Unified School District and only scaled up my work from here, right? I fought for birth control access on a national scale, told Jeff Flake off, and I'm here today in a continuation of that fight.
Protesters marched past the Capitol and the Supreme Court before ending up on the National Mall to text bank, encouraging more people to vote.
Today it's not just about marching. We're also going to be doing a phone text bank, as you see behind us, where there are socially distanced chairs where people can sit down and text bank voters all across the country.
People gave different reasons for coming out, but there was one common theme: make a plan and vote.
Seems like we've reached a precipice and everything's about to collapse. And everyone, myself, anxious, nervous, sad, and this is seems productive and also re-energizing to continue the fight.
Some elements felt like previous marches. People held up signs with words and art important to them, dressed up, wore pink hats, and held pride flags. Buhol Rodriguez says she hopes she doesn't need to do it again this January.
This is not my first march, but I really, really hope it's my last. I was here for the original Women's March. I was here for another march later on, and this is my third march. I'm totally not a political person, but the situation is such that it declares that I need to do this.
We will not allow it.
On Thursday, the Senate Judiciary Committee will vote to move forward with Judge Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation. In Washington, Maithili Gupi, Cronkite News.
If a Senate Judiciary Committee vote to confirm Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court is held Thursday as expected, a vote by the full Senate confirming her appointment could come as early as Monday, just 8 days before Election Day. And here's what the scene looked like in downtown Phoenix as hundreds of people gathered at the state capitol Saturday morning. They were protesting the latest U.S. Supreme Court nomination and encouraging everyone to vote out President Trump. Demonstrators were also showing their support for Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ rights.
Coming up next on Cronkite News, more than 200 Arizona families are quarantining. We'll tell you where and why after the break.
And a local Hamilton baseball standout made a huge impact in the National League Championship game last night. All the details just minutes away.
This month in Passport, your on-demand library of the best of PBS.
Everyone has secrets. Are you protecting someone?
I have no choice.
You do have a choice. You're looking at him.
That's amazing. We could be standing on top of a T-Rex right now.
women demanded new space and pushed the boundaries of what being a lady means.
These and other shows are available with Passport. Become a member of this PBS station, sign in, and start streaming today.
Here we go. Lights up. Whoa.
As artists, we conduct our educations in public. You can never know whether it's going to be a success. One just has to risk it.
It's you and the work and the place. It's a very particular relationship.
Here's our lens. Tell us what you think.
Friday night at 9 on Arizona PBS.
Today, the Arizona Department of Health Services is reporting 748 new positive cases of coronavirus in Arizona. With K-12 schools reopening across the state, the number of positive cases at one Valley High School is concerning. Cronkite News reporter Sean Rice joins us now with more. Sean?
On October 12th, the Scottsdale Unified School District allowed middle schools and high schools to reopen for in-person learning. However, Chaparral High School, which has over 2,000 students, is dealing with one of the biggest outbreaks of any school in the state. And here are some fast facts. There have been 77 positive cases in Maricopa County schools last week. 18 of those cases have been linked to Chaparral High School. 10 of those that tested positive attended in-person classes at least one day last week, and this forced 219 families to quarantine due to close contact communications. And the Chaparral High School football team has not played a game this season because of positive COVID-19 cases on the team. Dr. Josh LeBaire, the executive director of the ASU Biodesign Institute, spoke to Cronkite News about the younger demographic.
The young age demographic is one that can easily transmit the virus, so we really have to be careful. How much of that is coming from the high schools? I don't know what the actual total numbers are there, but I think it's a reflection of the fact that this thing is kind of on the rise again in our state.
Like colleges in the state, high schools throughout the district are committing to a hybrid learning environment. This includes phased-in on-campus activities with limited access to students and staff. The Scottsdale Unified School District has a board meeting scheduled for tomorrow, October 20th, where they plan to provide an update on the school's numbers. In the studio, Sean Rice, Cronkite News.
While the coronavirus outbreak has put millions of Americans out of work, the ones who are still employed are feeling overworked. According to a new poll by the Associated Press and NORC Center for Public Affairs Research, 1 in 4 U.S. workers have considered quitting their jobs amidst pandemic stress. One of the top stressors, juggling responsibilities and concerns of contracting the virus. The poll also shows 57% of workers say their employer is doing about the right amount in response to the pandemic, and 24% say their employer is going above and beyond.
Finally, tonight, the Dodgers came back from a 3-1 deficit early on in the National League Championship Series to beat the Atlanta Braves last night 4-3, securing their spot in the World Series. Local Hamilton High School standout Cody Bellinger hit the go-ahead home run in the bottom of the 7th inning with 2 outs, giving the Dodgers the lead. Then, in the top of the 9th, Bellinger closed the game, marking the final out with a routine fly ball catch. The Dodgers will now meet the Tampa Bay Rays in the World Series with Game 1 starting tomorrow. First pitch is at 5:09 Arizona time from Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
The year 2020 has seemingly flipped the world upside down. So how do we take care of ourselves during this time? We break it down next.
Hey Tina, thank you for breaking down self-care during COVID and the racial unrest with me. So how have you been taking care of yourself during COVID?
I think I've been trying to take stock of the situation figure out exactly what my needs are, what the needs of my family are, what I can and cannot do, and then trying to find daily acts of joy, whether that's going on a brisk walk, going swimming, or just calling my mom and spending time with family members.
Yeah, I hear you, trying to find the little things that bring you joy, right? And just taking care of yourself, like you said. Well, how have you been taking care of yourself in the context of all this racial unrest? Because for me, those two seem to overlap, like finding the joy, but then also doing the things I love. I love to bake. I love to read. I've been watching really good TV. But then how have you been doing that with the racial unrest too? Is it the same, or do you have like different practices?
I feel like you said, they are overlapping, but it's important for us to realize that on top of all of the challenges that we're experiencing from COVID, that we're also dealing with a lot of racial fatigue and a lot of racial trauma.
Yes.
And the feelings around that, whether it's sadness or fear or this perpetual anger, figuring out what to do with that anger. And so I've been doing a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, a lot of practicing mindfulness and prayer. And again, trying to figure out what's bringing me joy today. Let me read a book from some fabulous author. Let me go outside and breathe fresh air. I started a garden during COVID. I thought I had a black thumb. I have 16 plants now. So just finding things that are generative.
Like you, I do a lot of journaling, reading stuff. I also find I'm gravitating to reading material by Black authors, because I try to remind myself that our ancestors lived through far worse, and yet they still found the will and the means to survive. And I try to just remind, and I don't have to go that far back. I can think of my parents, I can think of my aunts and my uncles. They've survived far worse. And just trying to remind myself of the difference in where I am, let's say 100 years ago or even 200 years ago. I also find listening to music is very cathartic, especially the type of music genres that I love. Now that actually bleeds into another question I've been pondering. Both of us work at predominantly white universities. So how have you been navigating the racial unrest and the COVID, even in the context of that? Because we're interfacing with primarily white colleagues.
I think that COVID shifts that a little bit, but I do think that there is a reawakening, because as you said, this is a part of a continuum, and we've been here, many times before, and this is another iteration. And so with this re-enlightenment or new awakening around all of the unrest, there are a lot of expectations to further or amp up or begin racial equity training, equity work at the college. And oftentimes the question becomes, who's going to do this work? And whenever we're talking about diversity or equity, then the need for many is to have POC in the room. The challenge is if you don't have that many POC in the room, then that can really tax and overburden those POC who are there. And so what I've been trying to think about is how to push back from burnout and compassion fatigue, and to create boundaries about what I can do and what I cannot do, and continue to strike for harmony at the workplace, and also making sure that we are all taking responsibility to do this work and not just a select few, and hoping that we're having conversations around how we sustain these moments where people actually have a renewed interest in racial healing and equity and us getting out of the place that we're in now.
I mean, that racial fatigue is real because, like you said, there are not a lot of us in these spaces. And so it can feel like the burden is on the few of us that are there. And I'm glad you said boundary setting, because I have definitely been setting hard, fast boundaries around my time and my resources and my efforts. And I don't know about you, but I've asked myself the question several times since May, where can I be the most effective? Because I can't do everything, and I know that, and I don't want to do everything. I don't want to tire myself out. And in asking the question, where can I be the most effective? That helps me narrow down whatever the choices are in front of me. Now, how do you set boundaries with your colleagues? Do you have specific practices that you do?
Yes, I've been working this muscle, and sometimes it's effective, other times it isn't. But it is to say no. And not to, I think there are different ways we can go about it. You can explain why, but the truth is we shouldn't have to explain why we need to set boundaries.
Right.
Now, if we need to be explicit, then we will. But to simply say thank you, and that sounds like a great cause, but I can't undertake that right now.
Exactly. A simple.
I'm trying to be honest and more transparent about where I am personally and emotionally, and that at some point, I have to pull back for self-care and sanity.
Right. No, just saying no, thank you for thinking of me, but I can't do this at that time. You know, a simple sentence, saying no, it's firm. And I know as women and women of color, you know, we're expected to not say no, but I push back on that trope all the time. Like, my no is a no, and it's final. Are there any other things you do to set boundaries around your time and your mental health?
I'm trying to actually push back from not only as much social media, but also the news. And also within this age of COVID, where everything is online, feeling like I have to respond to every single email that comes in around work or even family. But no, to set boundaries. On these days, I am turning off my electronics and I'm not responding to work things after this time and committing to that. And instead of no, right before bed, let me check as well and try to, get ahead of tomorrow, realizing that sometimes I'm part of my own problem in this as well. And so creating those boundaries, I need to pull back and say, it'll be there tomorrow. I can start again in the morning.
Well, you need to help me with that because I need help setting boundaries around my email. Well, thank you, Tina. Thank you for breaking down self-care in the era of COVID and the racial unrest with me. Talk to you later.
For having me. Bye.
Bye.
This hour of local news is made possible by contributions from the Friends of PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you. If you have comments about Arizona PBS News, please contact us at one of the addresses on your screen. Thank you. Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from
Friendship Village Tempe, a retirement community for over 30 years, offers independent living with residency options, lifelong learning classes, as well as continuing care. Information at friendshipvillageaz.com.
I had a baby, and somewhere in there, I started to feel like, what do I have a real voice in? I grew up, as I have often told people, one generation and one holler removed from poverty. I kept going back to who's